There you go.
So we get the range.
Proximity effect.
It's so serious.
Yeah.
over here.
1, 2.
Tell me your deepest secrets.
Nobody will know.
Keep your mouth shut and your eyes closed. Yo, welcome to the Bub and Bob Show, where we talk about faith, culture, and all kinds of other things from a Christian worldview. I am Bub Coons. Over there behind the magic glass is the dutiful, diligent, and loyal Bob Matosian.
Did you say dutiful or beautiful?
Gonna go with dutiful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. You okay?
Yeah, I'm
Hi,
fine.
Everybody?
I'm fine.
Right. My guest today is a renowned bass player, guitar player specifically. Now listen, you got to walk through this with me. He cut a CD called Pondering the Sushi a while ago, and now he has a web series that he hosts called Grooves in Sushi. You kind of getting the theme there?
There is a theme,
yes.
yes.
Here is the always sensational, always satisfying, the sashimi of bass players. This is Norm Stockton. Hey man, welcome.
Thank you, sir. That's quite an intro.
Well, you got to start with something good.
Honored to be here. Thank you.
Hey, so you're Japanese.
I am. I'm half.
Yeah. Were you born there and came here?
I was born there, lived there for a total of 13 years.
Okay.
With a 5-year break in Hawaii, but yeah.
Okay.
And then moved to California and haven't left since.
So let's go back a little bit into your story. One of the things we love to do here is we know that the stories of changed lives actually change lives, and the story that God has in all of us is important for other people to hear and be inspired and go, man, that can happen to Norm. God can use Norm.
Exactly.
Or God can use Bub, and man, he can use me too. So we like to go back a little bit. Tell me how you were raised, and at what point in your life did you start thinking about God or Christ, and how did that all happen?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I was born and raised in Japan, and Japanese mom, American dad, and long story short is that
Don't make
Oh,
it.
no. We want to hear the whole thing.
Dad was a civilian contractor civilian working for a defense contractor, and he got tonsillitis, and my mom was the nurse.
Whoa.
Oh,
So that's how they met.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So
yeah.
Dad was picking up on the nurse,
Yeah.
which is a great mental image. Anyway, they were married for 50 some odd years.
Wow.
And my dad passed a few years ago, but really, great family, really tight, but not Christian.
Okay.
And so lots of people talk about having this, God-shaped void in their whole life. And then they discovered, and then it kind of became apparent when they came to Christ.
Right.
And I wasn't necessarily that guy. I felt, I had a good life and, good solid family and the whole thing. But I feel like God tracked me down.
Right.
He was pursuing me. So we moved to Hawaii when I was 10 years old. My sister was an asthmatic, and every winter she'd get this really gnarly Japanese cold and end up in the ICU. And one year, right around when I was 9 or 10, the doctors told my parents that, she probably won't last another Japanese winter.
Whoa.
So it was like, oh, well, we're moving,
Okay,
So
yeah.
we ended up moving. We had the opportunity to either move to Guam or Hawaii. Thank you, Lord.
Guam. Yeah.
That was before the snakes and the
Yes,
whole deal
yeah.
on Guam. But so by God's grace, we ended up in Hawaii, and public schools in Hawaii are terrible.
Okay.
I no offense to people that are educators in the public school system in Hawaii, but especially in those days,
Yeah.
public schools in Hawaii were no good. And so my parents ended up sending me to a private school, HBA, Hawaii Baptist Academy.
Nice.
And
I went to a Baptist high school.
is it okay?
Yeah,
So we have that in common.
Yeah.
And they actually called it Religious Emphasis Week.
Okay.
During Religious Emphasis Week, I came to Christ.
How old were you?
I was 15.
Okay.
Now, my brother, shortly after we moved to Hawaii, actually became really tight friends with this Christian family, and they had sons, and we surfed together all the time and the whole thing. Shortly after that, my brother came to Christ, and that began probably some of the gnarliest family fights we ever had, because my brother walked in the house one day and said to my folks that, you guys are good people, but you guys are going to hell.
Oh, well, that's a great way to start. Wonderful, winsome approach. Yeah.
And so that was what made it even more interesting that my parents sent me to HBA, because, It's the sovereignty of God is really what it is, you know. And
so there was nothing when you were in Japan. You weren't a religious family. No one went to did any kind of faith-based anything. It was just
my dad. I think my dad was raised. There's actually so many aspects to this. My grandma on my dad's side, so my dad's mom, was. I believe that I am me and my the other family members are. Testimony to her faithfulness because she prayed for us all when we were growing up. And I remember getting these birthday cards with these verses, and I'd be like,
where's the money?
Exactly. And, grandma's, she's nice, but she's so religious, and all this stuff. And years later, I'm looking back, it's like, man, grandma was the one who was like standing in the gap,
That's
so I get a chance to thank her in person someday.
Yes, you do.
But anyway, so gnarly family fights, but my folks, by God's sovereignty, sent me to HBA. I came to Christ. Shortly after that, my parents and I moved back to Japan.
Oh, okay.
My brother and sister were in college already at that point. So we moved back to Japan, and that began very shortly after that, what I call my 8-year spiritual coma.
Oh, okay.
I believe John 3:16, no problems, but I wasn't walking at all and had no interest in anything of the Lord. And it wasn't until 8 years later, my life came crashing down. I was a 21-year-old single divorced dad.
Okay.
And my brother was marrying my now sister-in-law.
Yep.
And her dad was a pastor. And if you can follow this, my sister-in-law's younger sister invited me to church that Sunday after the wedding. And, God meeting you where you're at, and probably God's sense of humor too. I was like, cute girl invited me to go hear her dad preach. I can do that.
I think God uses cute girls. And lots of men.
Amen.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So
I was sitting there in church that morning, and her dad knew nothing about my story, but he was reading my mail, man.
Yeah.
And maybe there's somebody here who used to walk with the Lord and be really close with him, and I was just like sitting there going, oh.
Did you talk to him? How did this?
So within a month after that, I rededicated my life to Christ, and I've been walking with him ever since. But, we'll probably get into this, but suffice to say that for me, music was my Egypt, and I was prepared to give up music because for me, it was just like, it just had all these bad connotations and unhealthy aspects.
There's friends of mine that became the one guy that had, I think, every Bob Dylan album and stuff, and he became a believer, and he got rid of it. And then 2 years later, he goes, why did I have to make such I wish I had all that stuff. Why did I do that? I think though at the time, right, I've always heard some people, a really good saying is it's easy to give up some things for the Lord, but it's not until you give up your dreams that you really follow them. Yeah. Because we like to hold on to those and think, oh, he put those in my heart, but it's really hard to push those aside and go, even my dreams, whatever it is, Lord.
Yeah, whatever it is. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's exactly what it was.
And you had the point. How long were you playing? Was it always the bass, or do you play multiple?
I started playing the bass actually when I was about 14.
Because of Kiss? No, I don't.
I always lots of friends that were into Kiss.
That's why
that was not me.
It's the right time, and Gene Simmons is the bass player. I don't know how good he is. I don't know anything, but I always wonder that. What are your influences there, and what started?
It started with the Beatles.
Okay.
And I'm not quite that old. I had a lot of friends that were into the Beatles when other people weren't. But it was pretty much the Beatles, and then so I took a couple strings off an acoustic guitar that we had laying around the house, and I learned a couple Paul McCartney lines. But shortly after that. For me, it was actually a band called Rush.
Yes.
I was, yes.
Yes, and Rush. the two 3-letter name. Yeah. No, the Rush is 4, I guess. Never mind.
But
I can't count.
Definitely, they were bands with really hyperactive bass players. Yeah. And so that began, a long period of sort of being a clone of Geddy Lee in this case here. Yeah. But, so those were the influences, but a lot of progressive rock stuff back in those days.
Yeah. And how long, when did you start? You said
I started when I was 14.
Okay.
So that was.
So a little later than I would think. I thought maybe like a Prodigy grabbed it.
No,
No.
I kind of got into it later, and but it was almost entirely during that 8-year spiritual coma.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until so I'd been doing that a long time, and then came to Christ, and it was like, man, it's like the rock band thing and partying and the whole thing is like, I don't know. And so I was going to give it up, and then right around that time, this home fellowship I was going to, the worship leader's like, oh, you play bass? Well, why don't you come and lead worship, with me? And I was like, what's that? And so I brought my bass, but it was God, kind of orchestrating the whole thing, because that led to, there's so many things that led to ultimately to Maranatha Music and touring the country.
Well, your willingness, it seems even your willingness to give that up, and God goes, no, watch how I use it. It's like the opposite of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because you were willing to.
Yeah, on a much smaller scale, but kind of that Isaac thing, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. I was thinking of that.
Hey, Norm, is it true that the legend of Norm is that you could only afford 4 strings on a guitar, and that's how you started on bass?
It was all monetary, yes.
Okay.
Bob does all the deep research around.
When you say deviate from the norm, that's the comment all the bass players make when they play a riff that he has not played yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's actually a Rush line, deviate from the norm.
It is.
Yeah. Let's think. Good reference. Throw that out there. So what is that story? So you didn't have a whole lot of money, or you just...
No, that was just the practical aspect of it. It was a Beatles song called Shoulda Known Better. And if you saw my technique, I should have known better.
Yeah.
It was just terrible technique, but I was such a Beatles fan, and I thought, man, I'd love to be able to kind of emote this music, know? And we didn't have a bass guitar around the house. And so, but there was an old acoustic guitar. And so I started playing it. It's like, oh, wow, that's actually what he's playing, So all by ear. And so that was what it started on. And then shortly after that, I went down to the Navy Exchange in Yokosuka, Japan, where I grew up, and bought a terrible bass guitar. But that was my first bass guitar.
That's all right. That's how it starts. So how did I didn't know you were married before.
Yes.
Yeah. So you, like you said, you were single, dad, recently divorced, which is not great to put on the dating, things. But so what happened? What was that? You were young, I'm guessing.
I was very young.
Yeah.
She was a high school girlfriend.
Okay.
And we had kind of a long distance relationship for a while, and then she moved to San Diego.
Okay.
And we were in love, and but God was nowhere in the picture. By my, I'm sure he was willing, but I wasn't,
Yeah.
And so, we had a fabulous marriage for about the first year. And then the second year was absolute hell. And ultimately, I won't get into the sort of details, but suffice it to say that I, even though I was not walking, I always held to the biblical standard for marriage. And when I had my biblical out, it was like, okay, I'm gone.
Oh, okay.
I'm gone, And so I had my daughter for about a year.
Okay.
And then my ex-wife got remarried, and she ended up, this is actually a whole other redemption story that I won't get into too much. But bottom line is that we were estranged after being quite close after they got married. Being quite close with all of them for a while, we got estranged, and for about 20 years had no contact.
Wow.
And about 2.5 years ago, God brought about some restoration.
Wow.
And so she and my grandson, you have a grandson, 13-year-old, now he's 14, but at the time he was 13-year-old grandson, which is a trip.
Fantastic. I know I have a granddaughter.
Yeah.
Didn't you just meet him like 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Exactly. Wow.
Yeah. So when they flew out to California to visit us, that was the first time meeting him. So it's been awesome.
Yeah.
But she's in her 30s now, my daughter, and she's now settled in California, and her and my grandson lived with us for about 9 months, just moved out a few months ago, but we kind of helped them get established on the West Coast.
Fantastic.
So,
Well, praise God for that. That's amazing.
It's full on.
Yeah. So,
by the way, about that, since this is all kind of about testimony,
a little bit.
I shared online about just a little bit about that story, and people were coming out of the woodwork going, that's super encouraging for me, because I'm now on my 18th year
Yeah.
of waiting, or that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and
tough
so it's
stuff.
like, my encouragement to anybody listening is keep praying.
Keep praying.
Yeah.
Yeah, stay the course,
Yep,
right? And
absolutely.
That's good. So let's move into your new gig thing. Talk about grooves and sushi, and what is I mean, you've been ever since I've known you. There was a sushi thing. You got to eat this, and you got to play the bass, or you're not cool. No, what are you doing? It's in your house that you're putting something together.
It is, yeah. It's not a unique idea. The idea actually, it's an adaptation. If you go online and search out a show called Live from Daryl's House, Daryl Hall from Hall & Oates. A number of years ago, he started doing these shows that were shot in his home. Now, granted, his home is about five times my size.
A little different.
But, where they do music and then they bring in a chef and it's kind of like road stories over food and the whole thing. And I thought, that's a pretty great format. And, but I didn't give much more thought to it. And then, when this project started, doing more music, I have 2 solo projects. Pondering the Sushi was my first one. Then an album called Tea and the Typhoon came out in 2009, which is my last project.
Okay.
And but when Grooves and Sushi, when the music started coming together, I started thinking, well, it'd be really fun to do this in a different way than I've done my other projects, where I kind of have musicians and we maybe track the drums and then we overdub the bass and then bring in the guitar player. It's all sort of done
Produced
individually,
which
is certainly a cost-effective way to do it. Way more cost-effective way to do it. But you lack a certain synergy that you really can't achieve. You can simulate it, but you can't achieve it unless you have musicians in a room that are responding in the moment. And even if the song is kind of worked out and arranged, there's still subtle things that happen when you have everybody in the room. And you're kind of you're literally riffing off of each other.
No redos, bro. Here we go.
Exactly. That's
it's like you're here, like there's an audience, you go. Yeah.
And so it started kind of sound like, man, if I tracked it live, and if I was able to bring in different ensembles of players for different shoots, the idea of doing a shoot was kind of like, well, if we're going to track this live, it may be kind of fun to video it.
Yes.
How much harder, how much more work might that be?
Video in. That's an
Easy.
Easy thing to do. You push a button or two.
I learned you exponentially increase the workload when you add video. But I'm super glad we did it. It's been a ton of work, but I'm super stoked with how it's turned out. And
the last one I just saw is beautiful. I mean, I just thought it's so fun. It's so fun to watch. I mean, music, unlike this show, there's such a universality to it that you can learn anything from any of these guys, and everybody loves music, so you can jump in at any time. And there's not comments or statements or propositions being said like there is here that can turn off people. So I think it's one of the things I've always loved about you in watching you from afar is that how you balance not even balance it, include it, your Christian walk with, playing in rock bands and playing in other stuff and meeting people that aren't believers, but still holding your course. How do you balance that? I mean, because I know you don't want to kick open the door and go, I'm a Christian, everybody, you do it in a very cool kind of way that it's always been, I've always observed it, and it's been nice to see that you do that.
It's, I don't know that I have any sort of major strategy about it. I think the main thing is that I'm trying to be Jesus to people that maybe would never step foot in a church.
Right.
And I know for me, is it Oswald Chambers that said, but by the grace of God, I know what I would be apart from the grace of God. And I'm super aware of what a grace case I am. And the fact that I'm an adopted son, a co-heir with Christ is something I'm aware of every day. So I know that everything that I have, any talents I have, are for his purposes and his glory. And that's actually something that became really clear through that, period of time where I was planning on giving up music. It's like, oh no, he gave me this stuff, but it was actually not for my glory. It was for his, And so, yeah, it's kind of a thing where I am just trying to represent the Lord well and
Yes.
love people well and recognize also where I was at for those 8 years. Even though I knew the Lord, I was not walking and had no interest really in hearing about it.
Right.
And so, and that's as somebody who knew the Lord,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird about it,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm thinking when I encounter people at music trade shows or on the road in a secular, mainstream situation, I want to walk into it as a representative of Jesus,
Yeah.
and I don't think Jesus is going to walk up to somebody and say, you need to be a Christian, right?
Yeah.
It's like he's going to love them.
Like what your brother did to your
Yeah.
parents.
By the way, he's redeemed himself.
Okay, he's come along.
He's an awesome guy.
I'm sure.
He's one of my favorite people on the planet, and my brother and I are very, very tight.
That's awesome.
And but yeah,
There's such zeal when you're a new believer that
Yeah.
you're not figuring what's coming out of your own mouth
He
and
was-
your attitude. And
he
shit.
was
Yeah.
15 years
I did
old.
the same stuff
Yeah.
all the time. I
So-
mean, for the first, maybe the first decade I was a believer, I was so obnoxious. I couldn't even. And then someone
well-intentioned, but
totally well-intentioned.
Yeah.
But then someone just came up to me and said, "Well, you can grab 100 people and they can all move to the table, or you can come like you do to the table and run off 99 and keep the one that'll tolerate you. What do you want to do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I do that now." "Oh, yeah. Every time you enter a room, you do that." And I'm like, "Oh." So it was I think it takes, other strong believers and mentors to enter your life and jump. Did you have?
I think that's really awesome, by
Yeah.
the way. I was just going to say that the fact that person had the courage to
Yeah.
say that to you,
Yeah.
and that you had the teachability to go, "Oh,"
Yeah.
right? As opposed to, "What are you talking about?"
Hey, Norm, he's still working on that, just so you know.
Working on,
We're all works in
so much
progress.
better when I just converse with people though but I have been approached by multiple people over my life, and I appreciate all of them. All of them have been difficult, but everyone that has had the courage and the love, I would say, to come up and address me and say, I know this is what you really want to do, and from looking from this side, you're not doing it.
Yeah.
Let me, and I want to get better. I don't want that to happen. I want to, so I
Absolutely.
hang out and I bump and rub shoulders again with people like you and Bob, because you guys are so approachable and just easy to get along with, and like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I come in the room, I'm like a hammer. I'm like, "Calm it down, man. Calm it down. Put something on the hammer and shut up." But did you have any mentors? Do you have any spiritual mentors, or even musical ones? Like who?
I definitely have mentors. Not anybody that would, where either of us have put that label on it.
Right.
But certainly, yeah. I mean, musically, you can have mentors and not even
Not even know them.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
And so I've definitely had musical mentors. In terms of spiritual mentors, yeah, I have some really close friends that definitely hold my feet to the fire, and that we keep it real.
Yeah, keep you
So,
accountable.
Your wife's been known to do that, hasn't she?
Yeah,
Speaking of,
she's
Who I know really and love.
yeah.
Beautiful girl.
Gina is amazing. Yeah,
when did she come into the picture? When let's go back there. And when
it
did you
was
meet Gina?
shortly. Actually, let's see. I came back to the Lord. I'm going to date myself here, but I came back to the Lord in '89, and I met Gina in '91.
Okay.
And we were 91, 90. Yeah, I was super into windsurfing at the time. I actually did I sell a bass? I think I sold a bass and bought a windsurfer
Oh,
because I was done,
wow,
right?
yeah.
And I was living out in East San Diego County, and when you're a windsurfer, if you're not a windsurfer, you're not going to get this.
Yes.
But if you are a windsurfer, you'll completely understand. You become an addict to the wind.
Okay.
And it sounds so romantic. It's actually, no, it's not healthy.
Yeah, it seems scary. I see some of those people flying up and they're losing their heads out there. I'm like,
It is a
because some of that stuff in Miami, the wind can change and it blows people up on the shore. It
yeah,
hits them
those are
against
like kook slams on
Oh, okay.
Instagram. But that, generally speaking, it's nothing but absolute exhilaration.
Okay, you're just flying.
But it's when the conditions are right.
Yeah.
And in San Diego, it doesn't blow that much except in the mountains. And I used to drive from where I lived in East County to this lake in called Lake Marina. It was like an hour drive each way.
Yeah.
And I would do that probably 3 or 4 times a week because I was
Loved
addicted
it that
to
much,
it, you know? And, but I would always listen to Christian radio up and back, right? I was
Of course.
new coming back to Christ
Yeah.
and just soaking it all
Yeah.
in. And I was like, I probably need to find a good church, you know, and this one church in San Diego is really good. But, you know, man, it's like a 40-minute drive, you know, that's
long.
way too
That's-
far, you know? And as I'm driving back from Lake Marina, you know, and God just like, dude.
You can do this. Yeah.
And so I started going to Horizon, and Gina and I were both on the worship team there.
Okay.
So that's how we met.
That's when you met. And then when did you guys get married?
We got married in January of 92.
And then when did you move up and
2000.
okay. Is that where you popped around Coast Hills and stuff?
I was actually doing Coast Hills before that because I was on a team with Maranatha Music, and Monty Kelso, who was a
Right.
worship pastor at that time,
Right.
he had invited me up a few times.
Okay.
And so I was kind of starting to get into a rotation like around 99 or so,
Yeah.
98.
Yeah. So what is it? What's your balance now? What are you, do you still do a lot of gigs? Are you teaching? I mean, what are you passionate about right now? What are you digging into other than grooves and sushi? But or is that where most of it is right now?
Well, that's certainly been a huge time commitment and outlet for me, for sure. I'm 7 episodes
Okay.
have been released. And I just got done with this is my first crowdfunded project.
This is?
This is.
Okay.
Yeah. So
It's a good idea, by the way.
Hey, write that down.
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a ton of work.
Yeah.
Man. It's craziness. But by God's grace, just raised another 4,500 or so, which is about half
Wow.
of what I need to get to the finish line per se. So I'm kind of at this point trying to decide, you know, where I need to
Yeah.
cut the expenses or whatever. But bottom line is that, I've still got one more shoot, Lord willing, that was going to include Lincoln Brewster, who's somebody that I've worked with for years, and a drummer named Chris Coleman, who is out with a band called Beck now, but amazing drummer. And so that if I do that shoot in January, which I'm hoping to do, then I've got a bunch of work to ramp up for that. But speaking of Lincoln Brewster, that's somebody that I was on the road with him from 2006 to 2012, and then wasn't on the road with him, but doing a lot of recording for his instrumental project, which I really, really hope can come out soon.
Yeah.
It's been about 95% done for about 4 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's really great. I really love it. One song was released on a deluxe version of his last worship CD, and it's a little sample of it, but there's a whole album of that, you know. But so that, and then we just got done with his a mostly acoustic Christmas album.
Mostly acoustic Christmas album. There you go.
Yeah, it was supposed to be all acoustic, and then his signature Fender Stratocaster was released, and he had to play some of that. You
So
know?
you just put one word on there, mostly.
Yeah,
very good. You covered
exactly. And but yeah, it's really great. We tracked it, live.
Yeah.
And that's what we're planning on doing. I'm heading back up there in November to track his next worship CD, which I haven't done a worship CD with him since a project called Real Life back in 2011, I think. And this is going to be tracked live as well. There's a drummer, Zorro. He used to play with Lenny Kravitz.
Cool name.
He's a monster player. And so we're going to be bringing in a 2-inch analog tape machine and the whole thing.
Nice.
Going to go old school. And so it'll be fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, that and I teach at Biola University. I'm a freelancer. So, generally speaking, these days, if I have time for it and it'll help me pay the mortgage, then it's like, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm in. Yeah.
Hey, Norm, if things don't go well, do you think we could fit all the guys in here?
Yeah.
What, Grooves of Sushi?
Yeah, all the guys, they could fit around the table.
He's doing it right, though. He's doing it out of his home, which doesn't cost him extra.
Oh.
We should have done this in my
Yeah, but he doesn't have a view like this, though.
No,
Exactly.
Give him any view he wants. I think he could do the same thing. Do you have a morning routine, a ritual? Do you read the scriptures? Are you an average churchgoer? What's your day-to-day like Christian walk? Just as Norm Stockton, does it change a lot because of?
Well,
whatever's
as
going on?
Norm Stockton.
Yes, of the real Norm Stockton.
I am absolutely ever aware of God's presence in my life and ever dependent for sure. lately have not been quite as structured as I like to be. I used to have a fairly standard normal morning routine where I would spend time in the Word and then spend time praying, and nowadays there's a lot on the plate, so I end up usually late morning. It's like and so I'll spend just a little bit of time, go read over my devotional. But I do find myself in almost constant prayer, and not so much like it's not a King James kind of a situation,
of course not.
but it's sort of like an ever aware and ever dependent sort of a thing, And so I'm having constant conversations with God. Something cool happens, like, thank you, Lord, and I'm trying to learn even with the stuff that's not cool. It's like, Lord, you're allowing this, and I trust you, and but a lot of times it's like, Lord, help, Lord, provide, please, kind of thing. So that's the freelancer's prayer, right?
That is the freelancer's prayer. Please, Lord, give me something.
That whole thing of, Lord, I know you see it. So
what is it? It's never late, but
he's seldom early, but never late. And Norm, I know that you're no stranger to some personal pain too. And it's I think all of us share that. And how has that shaped your daily walk?
You're going to make me cry, right? What's going to happen here? It's going to mess up the makeup that
Hey, we don't use makeup. We don't use shh.
Only Norm.
It's I would answer that significantly. I'd say that for years I had this sort of it wasn't anything deliberate, but I had everything in these neat boxes, including God, probably, and now the God box was big, but it was a box nonetheless. It's like, I had my set sort of Christianese responses to the common things that happen in life. All things happen for a reason,
right?
And when gnarly stuff happens, then it shakes things up. And I have landed in a place that now I'm still fully in process, but I've landed in a place where I don't put God in a box, and I am firmly of the belief that this walk with Christ is messy. That faith is it's not linear, and it's messy, and through that and in spite of that, God's saying, trust me.
True.
And he's proven himself faithful in countless ways. And but I don't have these pat Christian answers for suffering or why terrible things happen anymore. I think we live in a fallen world, and we have an enemy who is here to kill, steal, and destroy.
Yes.
And yet God is saying, trust me. And
he's trustworthy.
Yeah, for sure.
But it takes time. I mean, like any relationship gets stronger and stronger. When my relationship with the Lord over 30 years is greatly increased, and it's increased the most in the most painful times. Yeah. And because my dad just passed away right around the same time that your dad passed away. Yeah. And it was a freak accident in the hospital. Out of the blue, nobody knew it was going to happen. I got a call, and I'm driving back to Texas I don't even know. The whole time I'm just trying to, I have a 1-year-old new, adopted daughter, and driving with my wife, and we stop every 5 or 6 hours so everyone can get out and stretch their legs. I'm doing these personal journals on my phone, just talking to my dad. And all of it was just an expression to the Lord about where my dad is, thankfully. and that all, that pain, but it's like, man, I did not like it, and I did not want it. And I thought there was supposed to be more time. And I had my picture of what God was supposed to let my dad do.
Right.
And that's
right.
what I think you're saying about the box thing. It's like, no, you're in charge, not me. I don't get to do it. And
if
then
I were in charge.
Yeah, we'd ruin everything. But but yeah, in His sovereign, in His grace, we get through it. But I would never. I wish no one fell and the garden happened a different way. But now God uses that more than anything. I think pain and suffering.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Show us a picture of your dad. Hold that up so we can see it, Bub.
My dad.
Yeah, this dad, mom and dad.
Dad and mom, they're the best. Pop's in heaven, hanging with Jesus. He's okay.
So is my dad.
We're waiting around.
And 11 days before he passed, I had the privilege of leading him to Christ.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
Which is another
whoa,
full-on God thing.
Whoa, that's incredible.
I never would have seen it happen. So yeah, so God's
was
God's
he
got
sick?
it. He had been kind of deteriorating for a number of probably 2 years, and he would actually have moments where he wasn't very lucid. But this was it was a total ordained, orchestrated thing.
Just came out of it just enough time for you to
go. and just kind of. I mean, he was tracking with everything I said, and I woke up that morning. Well, let me rephrase that. I didn't know that was going to happen when I woke up that morning. It wasn't anything I was planning on.
Right.
It was just all of a sudden, it was here's the window.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going in. He can say no.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go in.
It's not going to be because I didn't say something. Right?
Yeah. So God's good.
That He is. It's amazing, and all that stuff will be rectified at one point anyway.
And that's what I was going to say.
Evil will be banished, and
I think the other side of that is that there are things for which I don't think in this life I will have a satisfactory answer for, but God's not telling me that I need to have a satisfactory answer, right?
Yeah.
It's okay,
well,
I don't get it. I don't understand it, but God, you've got it.
And here's, and no emotional question is ever satisfied by an intellectual answer. Right? I mean, I know what happened. I know why it happened. I know these things. But it doesn't make me feel any better. I do trust the Lord, but it doesn't make me feel any better or make me go, now that I have the logical answer, I'll shift my heart and I'll just keep everything's fine. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
And I think to live in it, because a lot of people, it gets scary and then they skirt it. Because nobody really likes to address the pain and go through the pain. I think one of the beautiful things that Christ shows us is He walked through the pain. He didn't medicate. He didn't take the drink. He didn't try to. He went right through it, right up to it. He didn't want it.
That's true.
And then once it was that, he went through it. And I think we can learn from that because in the past I've medicated, whatever I drank, when I was this or I did that or I did stupid stuff where I rebelled. But the greatest thing is when you just sit with the Lord and go through it. Because you just come out a different person. He's doing a work on you, and I appreciate you sharing that. That's tough stuff. So what's going on with your career now?
I want to ask. I have a really stupid transition here.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of occupational hazards with being a musician, touring. Wouldn't you say?
I totally hear what you're saying. I had that way earlier, mostly in the days that I was playing.
Those 8 years.
In those 8 years. I played in a lot of situations where it's these are not my...
Yeah.
I mean...
I'm scared.
Yeah. There was some stuff that is if the police come in right now, we're...
Yeah, this is
not good.
Yeah.
So, there was that. Since then, though, no, I think even when I was out with Lincoln, which was the most where I was actually touring regularly, that band, we were all very, very close, so Lincoln and I especially we're just great friends. And so that was nothing but fun 99% of the time.
Right.
Sometimes it gets a little stressful on the road, but for the most part, we got along famously. So no, I think, but certainly in terms of, downsides of doing what I do for a living, the travel, if you're depending on your season in life, right? Being a happily married man with a family,
Yes.
I don't like being out a long time.
Yeah, me either.
And so for me, if I'm gone more than, 3, 4, 5 days, I'm starting to be kind of like, when am I going back, kind of thing. And not to mention that, the enemy is just terrible.
He's always growling, yeah.
He will usually slam my family when I'm gone.
Right.
So that's hard to find out about when you're, 1,000 miles away.
Yeah.
But no, I'm pretty much, when I get back home, I'm able to, just got done playing music and that was great. And God, there was a big harvest and that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to spend time with my family, and so that's cool. Sometimes I'll be doing a recording session or something for somebody where it's clear that these are not my peeps, but that again it's just like, I'm not name dropping. There was a very famous bass player, jazz bass player named John Patitucci that I had the honor of interviewing for a magazine many years ago. And John is a solid believer. He also plays with Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter, and he plays in a bunch of different, not Christian situations. But when I was asking him about that, he said, well, any situation I'm playing in, I'm bringing everything that I have to it, And so for him, whether he's playing for Wayne Shorter or Herbie Hancock or at his church on a Sunday, it's all a vertical statement, and I kind of try to approach everything that way. So even if I'm in a situation where these are not my peeps, it's like,
that's good.
how do I bring excellence here and point people,
And what you do now, it equips and empowers hundreds and hundreds of bass players all over the country. When I was young, I would go to shows, and I think Stu Hamm was my favorite. And I don't know, would he play the Peanuts song or something?
Linus and Lucy.
Yeah, but he was my favorite soloist on the bass because he would have so much fun with the audience. Yeah. And now you're working with him? You're doing a thing with him?
I'm doing an event in November, He and I are, I guess, we're the main... there's a handful of different people on the roster, but Stu and I are the sort of the main guys, I guess. Don't
you get a little starstruck like I am right now? It's like the Chris Farley thing. Hey, dude, remember?
You remember? Exactly. Stupid. I am. I've known Stuart for quite a while now, so that kind of makes it a little less that way. But when I first did an event where he was on the roster as well, I definitely did my Farley kind of, hey, you were a huge influence on me, I've watched the daylights out of your instructional video where you taught Linus and Lucy and some other stuff that so but that's been kind of a fun aspect of doing what I do, is that I've been able to meet and in many times share the stage with some people that were very influential on me. And so it's always fun to be able to go to that person and say,
that's pretty
personally cool. Thank them.
Yes, that's pretty cool. So. Do you when you travel, I mean, you've been doing this for a long time, just kind of the state of America thing right now. What concerns you about stuff going on right now? I mean,
is there anything going on?
You've raised daughters through this stuff, and you've been on tour. You've done all the stuff. You see it from a different vantage point. And man, when I was being raised, it just doesn't seem like none of this stuff was even on the horizon. And now I'm getting our kids are getting obliterated with just stuff on their phones and just. What do you see?
Are you talking political or terrorism related?
Culturally, let's just say.
Okay.
It's just what concerns you when you think about America. It could be political. I don't know. It's just from your point of view.
Well, I think and this may be a good edit point.
Okay. I just pushed pause. I swear I did.
Okay, you did?
I did. I swear I did.
Why?
No, I'm just kidding.
God, you just blew the whole moment.
I generally
never ask a bass player. There's political issues.
Well, I very, very intentionally don't ever discuss politics in public.
Yes.
There's a whole myriad of reasons for that.
Yeah.
Not the least of which is I don't intend to alienate. You're going to immediately, no matter what you say, you're going to alienate a huge number of people. So that said, if possible, I'd like to answer that more sort of in terms of just the culture that's going on.
Perfect.
Okay, is that cool?
Yeah.
Huge Trump fan. No,
That's how we're going to start the whole show.
Please welcome.
where's my MAGA hat? No. So the culture. Yeah, it is a scary kind of an unknown world we're living in.
Yeah.
Constant change and not all of it good. I also don't, but I don't share the view that, there's no hope.
Right.
But I think September 11th was a fairly significant turning point, and shifting of paradigms, just certainly in terms of American culture.
Yeah.
And I think all of the musician friends that I know experience they're regularly reminded of what a different world it is since 9/11, right? Just from practical things like getting on a plane now, it's a whole different thing.
Right.
And you're spending a lot more time thinking, Lord, please no explosives on this plane.
Right. Right. Or just how about shootings?
Yeah.
Just you're living in some little town and all of a sudden you get shot and or someone just unloads. Yeah, I think that's what kind of happens in a world where it moves away from any kind of Judeo-Christian values and morals are kind of just whatever. Truth is relative, and we're all scum anyway. We're all stardust. We just die. I mean, if you're teaching kids that in school, that you came from nothing, you're going to you're nothing, you're an animal. When they get out, why are we surprised that some of this stuff happens? But it's interesting because we don't get a whole lot of artists on the show. And musicians tend to want, and I've noticed this, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, they tend to want everyone to get along and let's just play together, right? And then there's people like me that I don't care if we get along. I need to tell you the truth right now, and this is how it is. But it's interesting, and maybe that
is a really interesting point you're bringing up, and I guess, I definitely view my role as one of loving people and bringing everybody together.
Yeah.
And just looking at racism in America, right? Much has been and can be said about that. My way to respond to that is having a very, very mixed, beautiful, like freakishly talented ensemble of musicians of so many different cultures and musical styles coming together and making music on Grooves and Sushi. And that'll have its own voice. And we're talking over sushi in the segments that are interspersed.
Yes.
And although many of us have only recently met, a lot of those players had not met until the shoot.
Which is interesting. Yeah, this is great.
And we all are family because we all share music, and many of us share the Lord as well.
Yeah.
And so I feel like if you're lacking hope, then if nothing else, watch Grooves and Sushi for that.
Yes. All right, we'd like to wrap up our show with this thing we call the one thing.
Yes.
Okay, and here's what we want you to do. If you had one thing to tell the world, look in that camera and you got a minute to say it. Whatever's on your heart. The one thing.
The one thing.
With Norm Stockton.
Not just for musicians, though.
For whatever it could be.
Oh, because if it's for bass players, then I have some very specific things to say.
One thing for bass players, we'll do a spiritual one.
Okay, one thing for bass. Actually, I'll do one thing for musicians. How's
Perfect.
that? Okay.
Love it.
So the one thing for musicians, I would say, is groove. What is groove? There are many definitions of groove. groove is the feeling in music or the element of music that makes you want to dance or shake your posterior to the beat. There are aspects of groove that are that where it's like it's so rhythmically solid that you can't sit still while listening to it. But there's other aspects of groove that you'd employ whether you're playing tied whole notes or rests, very inactive types of playing. And so the idea of groove, I define groove as a feeling of consistent, predictable, and reliable forward motion in the music. Consistent, predictable, and reliable forward motion. Musicians who have a passion for the groove are musicians that other musicians want to play with, and they're musicians to which people respond. When the rhythmic aspect is happening, it engages people and it helps the music to say something. And I learned this the hard way for many years. It was all about playing fast lines and everything. And it was through a painful experience in a recording studio that I realized that none of it matters if the groove's not happening. And so when my paradigm shifted and I became groove oriented, then that set up what I do in music today. So if you don't have a passion for the groove, I challenge you to nurture and develop a passion for the groove. And every other musician that you play with wants you to hear what I just said.
Okay, so that may have been the most spiritual ending we've ever had. Listen to that again and again. The groove is very important. He said a lot more than you think he said. Thanks for being with Bub and Bob today on the Bub and Bob Show. My guest, Norm Stockton. Thanks, brother.
Thank
Awesome
you.
having you here. We'll see you guys next time. Adios.